It is that time again, time for a closer, more analytical look at the week's top news stories and also some informed opinion.
We are joined now by our Powerhouse Roundtable today. Some introductions first. Mark Caputo is the Florida correspondent for Politico and author of the daily Politico Florida Playbook. Marlon Hill is an attorney with the Hamilton, Miller and Berthasell firm and past president of the Caribbean Bar Association. Melba Pearson is Deputy Director of the American Civil Liberties Union of Florida and a former prosecutor with the Miami-Dade State Attorney. Welcome aboard, everybody.
Great to have you all here. Marlon Hill, this situation in Venezuela is dire. What can the U.S. do that is meaningful to try and create a transition? I mean, don't we need to get a coalition of Central American, Caribbean countries and put more pressure on Maduro, because the U.S. can't do it alone?
Certainly. I think the ambassador of the United Nations and also our secretary to the OAS, they need to do a lot more work within the region, because Venezuela is squarely tied to many of the nations within the OAS, through the whole Petrocaribe deal that they have.
And they give cheap oil to some Caribbean nations, which vote with them or for them as a result.
Absolutely, but Maduro, he can't really sustain what Chavez had before, even though the military is on the side of the Chavistas, right? So he's all depending on that, and you see signs of that weakening within his government. I'm not sure how long he can sustain it.
Well, interesting that you bring that up, because what Cody Weddle just reported was that there might be some sort of military rebellion. We have no idea what that means at this point. This is just going down. But the strength, the military strength, if that's with the Maduro government, there is nobody really, Melba, that can do anything about it. And if this is a crack in the armor, and if these people we're seeing right now are staging what looks to be a rebellion, all bets are off.
All bets are off. And my mind sort of turns to the whole immigration consequences with regards to that, because I'm even experiencing in my own life where I'm encountering more folks from Venezuela that have fled, this tyranny and are here basically with nothing.
And those who have the ability to leave.
Right.
That's part of the problem, right, in regards to income inequality in Venezuela.
Right.
And that's going to be the battle between the opposition.
Mark Caputo wrote all about the political ramifications of Venezuelan immigration to South Florida.
Yeah, well, right now, there aren't a lot of Venezuelan voters. There's according to the University of Florida's Dan Smith, political science professor, he determined there are about 36,000, 35,000 foreign or Venezuelan-born voters on Florida's voter rolls. They vote at very high rates. Primarily, they are non-party affiliation voters. They're independent, like half of them. So they're an up-for-grabs segment of the electorate. But in the end, we can't really say that the Venezuela issue is going to dominate Florida politics. But, we have a history of razor-thin election margins. Yeah. So every little vote counts. And also, as Marco Rubio said a few years ago, Venezuela is basically the new Cuba. And you're seeing a lot of affinity and association between the Cuban exiles and the Venezuelan exile community. Right. So I think that'll be significant. But to answer your question of Marlon earlier, what can we do to change Venezuela's behavior? I don't think really anything. Because look at Cuba. We've had an embargo on them for 5 decades. Haven't really changed for us. It might be that we want to do sanctions and punishments because we think that the moral thing to do and the right thing to do, not because they're going to change their behavior.
I would point out that I don't think that Nicolas Maduro, a former truck driver, nothing wrong with truck drivers, is not nearly in the class of shrewdness and
he's not a Jesuit educated person like Fidel
Castro.
Exactly,
not Fidel or Raul are very clever, wily people. I don't think Maduro is in that class.
He's a bum and a thug.
What you see, though, in Venezuela, what you didn't see in the Cuban rebellion are those street protests, and you would never see a military uprising. You didn't see people on social media, because frankly there was no social media, tweeting out violence in the street and showing the world what's going on. I mean, that is a game changer.
Yeah, he won't be able to contain the opposition for very, very long. And if the military starts to see that the country is, and oil prices are also dropping, so what he's depending on in terms of his resources are also running out.
That's right. When Chavez was in charge, oil was $100 a barrel. Now it's, what, $47, and the economy in Venezuela, PDVSA, is just in real trouble.
I think there's another thing we should think about is the cocaine trade. There's going to be a pressure to bring money into the government, and Venezuela is ideally situated for shipping cocaine. And so the government there, at least unofficially, I would expect might be considering that.
Wow. Whoa. Silence.
Problem.
I mean, cocaine,
that's a mic drop.
Cocaine, cocaine is a license to print money.
Right.
And it's a dual benefit for them, because not only can they make money off of it, but they know the United States has some of the biggest noses for cocaine. So it's a way, in their phrase, to probably help poison the Yankee imperialist dogs.
And to sort of put a point on this conversation, it's, in my view, very disappointing that Secretary of State Rex Tillerson has essentially done nothing, said nothing at all about Venezuela. I mean, certainly North Korea, Iran are occupying his time, but the State Department.
But certainly he needs the staff. He needs the staff to do it, Michael.
Yeah,
one of the things that they
staff.
could probably do is appoint a regional ambassador to deal with the issues. This is really a great time to deal with Central American and Caribbean relationships.
I'm sorry, I know we need to move on, but Rex Tillerson used to head Exxon. He's an oil man. And he doesn't want to crack down on his old oil buddies in Venezuela. Go figure.
It all comes together. This administration.
All right,
It
so
all comes
Melba,
together.
let me get your reaction. On Tuesday, we all got wet in South Florida, especially if you lived in the Mary Brickell Village area of the city of Miami, or almost anywhere on the southern part of Miami Beach. Did you get wet? What did you think when you saw this video?
Paddleboarding?
You were in it, weren't you?
Well, the problem is I'm speaking as a 2-decade Miami Beach resident.
Okay.
So I have weathered many of these floods, and they don't seem to be getting better. So this is Exhibit A for climate change. That's a separate issue. But be that as it may, a little disappointed that the pumps that we sat through all this construction and all this drama trying to, navigate the streets of Miami Beach, and the pumps are not doing what they're supposed to be doing, which is
And so when the mayor
getting rid of
says,
the
well,
water.
we've only spent $80 million on mitigation and new pumps, you might say, well, gee, shouldn't that be enough to at least make a dent?
One would think so, but the events of this past week have shown we're not prepared for that, and heaven forbid should we end up in a hurricane situation.
It's going to happen again.
It's going to happen again.
High seas,
King
raising
tide.
tide, right, and not enough infrastructure to
What's
sustain
interesting
it.
to me is that, to your point, there is nothing that's going to hold back rising seas and flooding, and whatever you think causes it aside, it's happening. But politicians are coming out to say, we're going to do this, we're going to do this, we're going to do this, we're going to save you. And people are buying into the fact that, oh, let's try, let's spend the money and try. Mark, this is such a political issue that isn't going to be fixed.
Right. Well, I've talked to a few scientists. They say there's 20 years of global warming carbon built into the system. So if we went to zero carbon emissions worldwide, the seas would continue to rise and the globe would continue to heat because of our activity, according to them. So we still need to do something about it. And I think, and you're starting to see it in places like Tampa, where there's actually discussions in their county commission of like, let's not talk about carbon and all that stuff, but let's talk about mitigation. And we're not doing enough of it. And I think, yes, you say, is $80 million enough? No, the seas are rising.
But that's
you
the
can't
point.
fight the sea with $80 million.
That's actually the question. What is enough? You can spend, Miami Beach is spending, all told, $500 million doing really interesting, great, proactive things. And I think it did help, to the mayor's point, dry out earlier. It didn't help the flooding, but it helped the drying out. But eventually, that's not going to matter.
They're going to have, like Miami Beach is Exhibit A. If you look at like South Beach, you'll notice like and throughout the beach, the new buildings along the actual coast are built really high up, and it's in the center that things are on slab and on the ground. Those things, because of market forces and the forces of rising tides, are eventually going to get knocked out by the insurance costs and also just by the sea. And they're going to have to build up.
And the
that's
insurance
what's
is the
gonna
big
happen.
thing too, because
Huge.
it's going to be almost
Huge.
impossible to insure your property on Miami Beach, and then what?
The market forces will take it.
And then Mother Nature says, listen, it's enough. Everyone can move to Liberty City where everything is high. So Melba, you can move west.
I'll be a pioneer.
Well, when the new Liberty Square is available, we'll take a look.
After the indictments are done. Right?
And
Sorry.
boom.
Wait, quick break. Let's stop it right there when we come back. Stay with us.
Welcome back, live in our studio this morning. A very rowdy kind of round table in the best kind of way.
That's a good thing.
Ladies and gentlemen, let's move on here. We need to talk about Congresswoman Debbie Wasserman Schultz and a former IT guy, worked for her for a long time, since 2005. His name is Imran Iwan, and finally, after a couple of weeks, she finally spoke this week, said something about Mr. Imran, who's been arrested on bank fraud, but since last January, he was forbidden from getting into the House computer system, and he did House computers and data systems for the Congresswoman since 2005. So, Melba, what is your take on this? I mean, did she wait too long to say something? She said, I was afraid he was being racially profiled. He's a Muslim. I wanted to make sure, here's a picture of Mr. Imran, and protect him and do what was ethical and right. I mean, where does this stand?
You know, in my opinion, the reality is the law of this land is, innocent until proven guilty. So as far as she's concerned, she was waiting to see if charges were going to be filed, where this investigation was going, and seeing the tenor of a lot of what's going on the Hill, she had legitimate concerns as to whether or not he was being profiled. The minute charges were filed against him, she then released him from all employment, which makes sense to me. So I don't think this is necessarily such a huge issue.
But the optics were, correct me, Mark, if I'm wrong, that he worked for a lot of people on the Hill who did cut ties with him first.
In February.
Which made Debbie Wasserman Schultz the holdout, if you will. And so the optics of it were that she was not going to cut ties with him for what reason?
Well,
but also he didn't have access to sensitive information, so it's not like he could have done damage from that perspective, is my understanding.
Well, let's remember we don't know everything here. It's a criminal case. Let's also remember that the inverse of her statement that basically I was standing up against racial profiling is now implicating her fellow Democrats, claiming that because they released the guy, they fell victim to racially profiling him, including some African Americans. So
yeah,
who
Frederica
knows?
Wilson.
Yeah, Frederica Wilson, Congressman Meeks from New York. There's a number of them. Lois Frankel from West Palm Beach. Yeah. So we just don't know enough about the case. But on the optics issue, she was the head of the Democratic National Committee when it had an IT cybersecurity problem. When she was in Congress, she had an IT security problem. It's probably just coincidence, but if you talk to enough Democrats whom she has estranged over the years, and there are many of them, they will tell you that the problem is that when she has bad luck, she then makes bad decisions. From a political or PR standpoint, and now she's just dealing with that.
And the operative word is optics, right? It's another summer diversion, which I think is not going to end up anywhere, really.
Well, Representative Ron DeSantis, congressman who may be running for governor, Mark, he has said, oh, we need a congressional investigation into the way Ms. Wasserman Schultz handled this. I mean, does it really call for that, or is that just political ginning up interest in his possible run for governor?
I'm for more investigations of every politician possible.
If I may, one to sort of button this up, we in the mainstream media I've gotten so many emails and texts and so on. I know Glenna has as well. Maybe you have too, Mark. People saying you're covering this up, you don't talk about it.
These are just lunatics. You're just dealing with the fringe, far-right crazy people who, now that the Seth Rich conspiracy turned out to be not only a conspiracy and false, but caused a grieving family to grieve more.
Yeah.
But they're now trying to say, oh, this House IT issue is as big as the Russia investigation. It's not, but I think it's important, and I think they're right in that regard. And there are some media outlets that fell on their face not covering it.
Right.
I can say Politico was not one of them. That is, we covered this from the
get-go.
get-go.
You did cover it.
Yeah.
No, you did cover it.
Well, I will say the reason we got emails, and this is important to note, is the Congresswoman was actually with us the Sunday that it broke. But unlike what we choose to do every week, she could not appear live, so we had taped it before. So when people saw the interview on Sunday, it was a taped interview. It might not have registered as taped, but there was this news out that was not part of that interview. And so in defense of the viewers who asked that very good question, that is the answer to that question and why we didn't ask about that.
Your answer to them is pay attention, because we told you it was pre-taped. Look at the calendar.
I love our engaged viewers.
All right, we cannot end our roundtable without mentioning President Trump, and at least one development late this week that I found fascinating. It was the Washington Post, as you all know, printed transcripts of his conversations, phone conversations, with the Prime Minister of Australia and the President of Mexico. And apparently he told President Peña Nieto that he got 84% of the Cuban vote. And we wonder, where the heck did he find this figure? It doesn't seem at all accurate.
We always wonder where he seems to get his figures. He seems to have a real trend of embellishing things. Even today, he's embellishing the economic numbers, which were improving before the year even started. And he gets caught up in his own words and his own reality is very odd to me. But he believes that he's telling his own version of the news, and everyone else is supposedly
fake news.
Fake news.
There you go.
Yeah.
You know what I thought was, in all the leaks, what was so interesting was how he had asked the president of Mexico, please don't tell them you're not going to pay for the wall. To me, it showed the political machinations, which I think every administration does, for the optics and the politics of, but having the president of Mexico listening to the president of the United States ask him to keep the political optics going, that was kind of uncomfortable.
And pathetic, truthfully. And I don't think he embellishes, I think he lies. And he lied to the potential voters during the campaign trail, saying that I'm going to build this glorious wall and Mexico's going to pay for it, which anybody with real common sense knew that Mexico was not going to pay for that,
And
right? It was going to be the taxpayer dollar.
He's learning a very hard lesson that political rhetoric is very different from governing. So hopefully on his very month-long vacation while he's putting and golfing, he can think about that a little bit.
Yeah, we should point out that according to knowledgeable people, President Trump got between 52 to 58% of the Cuban American vote, and more power to him. I mean, that really was pretty good. Not as good, however, as Romney. Romney got like 65% of the Cuban American vote.
Oh no, Romney actually, at least in Florida, might have been beaten, if not tied, President Obama in President Obama's reelection. President Bush certainly did well. One of the more interesting things back onto the wall in that conversation with the President of Mexico, Donald Trump says on there, this is not the most important thing. Politically, it's the most important thing.
Yeah.
So he's basically in a candid moment, Donald Trump is saying, look, I don't really care about this wall, but these yutzes who voted for me want me to build the thing. So like, go along with the fiction that I really think it's important. And I think that was telling.
Do you think if President Trump was candid, he would have so much more support from people who right now are not supporters if he were candid about things?
Absolutely. He's losing his support around the edges. And this is the reason why he's visiting these cities that are supposedly about his base, so he can get this adulated crowd around him cheering and huffing and puffing behind him.
Yeah, but then he goes and he says things like, and I got a call from the head of the Boy Scouts saying it was the greatest speech the Boy Scouts ever got, and there was no call. So
again, signs of pathological lies. I mean, I'm very concerned about this trend that we're seeing.
That is going to be the final word. Melba, you got it this time. Thank you all very much. Marlon, Mark, thanks for coming in. All right.